Oh, ho, 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 babies. It is good to be back. I hope you missed me because, man, I missed you guys. I'm excited as shit. I just had to take a break from Halloween for a little while because, man, I worked my ass off. But I really did have a good time doing it. And more than anything, it was a lot of great experience. I learned a lot. I had a good time. I feel more like a YouTuber now. Still trying to get those subscribers, though. But while I was taking a little break, I was trying to figure out some more videos I wanted to do coming up. I was sort of like taking that time to iron out my future a little bit with some videos, the schedule. And I was like, you know, Sean Connery just passed away, and man, why don't I do the Bonds? But it's like, I can't cover all of the Bonds. It's like way too many movies. It's 24 films. 26 technically, 25 I only really count. Anyways, we'll get into that along the way. So what I decided on is I'm gonna do a video on every single actor that ever played Bond. I'm gonna rank them. There's been 6 actors that most people only consider the 6, and me too. These are the 6 I considered that played Bond. So I'm gonna rank them 1 through 6. And because there's so many films by each actor, I'm gonna choose my favorite film from each actor and review that one. So to wrap that up, 1 video for each actor that ever played Bond, choosing one of his movies to review, and ranking the actors 1 through 6. And the order I'm gonna go through them in is the way that they are, just in real time. So Connery being the first one, and so on. So let's get started. First one, Sean Connery. So when the first Bond movie ever came out in 1962 called Dr. No, starring Sean Connery, it was released by Albert R. Broccoli. I always said broccoli growing up, but it is broccoli. And the other producer was Harry Saltzman. So it was always a Broccoli and Saltzman production, has been from then and is still till now. I think some names have changed over and it's passed down from generations, obviously. But the Broccoli family is definitely the ones that are still majorly in charge. And all the movies thus far, from what I understand, have been based on individual stories by Ian Fleming, the guy who created the character of James Bond and all the old school novels. So most of the time, the titles of the movies are based on the titles of some of the old novels, for the most part. But when the first movie came out, Dr. No, nobody really knew exactly how big this was gonna be, and especially when it first came out, nobody had ever seen anything made like this. It was excellent, spectacular, grandiose. As far as filmmaking was concerned, this was one of the original, like, super big looking films. I don't think it was like the biggest budgeted film or anything like that, but as far as the way it came off for the audience, just being like, man, this is action, boy.
James Bond.
And it did nothing but just take it to the next level every movie. Sometimes it went a little too far, but I gotta say, some of that I love. But we're gonna get to all that. This one's about Sean Connery. He's the one that set the tone for the character, the first guy to ever play it. He did 6 films. So 6 movies, man. I mean, that's a lot for the character. The one that still holds the title is Roger Moore doing the most films. But Sean Connery set the tone. Every actor that's played the role since Sean Connery has said they've looked to his acting to try to see what they can take from it to play theirs. And up until this point, there was nothing on the scale of these movies as far as the way the camera moved. The cinematography was all top notch for the time. It was great, and this is in a time where stuff was still being discovered in film. You know, there were still discoveries with lenses and filmmaking. It was all still in its pioneer stages. Nothing had been developed like in the sense that like what Michael Bay and Spielberg were using. I mean, this was 1962, might as well have been the 50s. But they all had a very specific formula to them. They didn't really nail down the formula quite right away in the first film. They were still, you know, learning from themselves. But after the success of the first film and people realized, hey, this is gonna be something, they quickly started to shape and sculpt the formula that they would soon to use for every film. And some people have a hard time watching old school movies. I really don't have a problem doing that. I'm fine with it. I do think that it helps that I was born in '81. Not that that's a super long time ago, but at that time the movie was only about 20 years old. So it'd be no different than me watching a movie now from 1990 or 2000. Damn. But if you can really try to just set yourself into that frame of mind, where they were in the place and time of the 50s and 60s, where we were as a society as far as technology and how advanced we actually were at that time, you can enjoy these movies. You just have to put yourself in that time. But to me, they really were ahead of their time. Especially the one that I'm going to cover by Connery, which is my favorite one of his, and it's a lot of people's, Goldfinger. Goldfinger came out in '64, and this was the 3rd installment. They had already done From Russia with Love, which had already gotten some big name actors in it because the first one, it was pretty much just Connery, and they were focused on him and some of the other people, and obviously the girl and the villain. But once that one did so well and the success was very well apparent to everybody, audiences and actors, other people want to be involved. So they got Donald Pleasance and they got Robert Shaw, who was in Jaws, to play the big brute force. They started implementing like the Bond girls more and that making that formula part of it. So the villain, the Bond girls. And to me, Goldfinger is the one where they really nailed down the opening scene just right.
Shocking.
The opening song that was seductive with the cool stuff that you had, again, at that time, you had never seen anything like that. They really had nailed down the formula by this movie. And remember, this is the third installment, so at the time, it was kind of like part 3. What's this one gonna do that's different from the other two? What's this one gonna do to really bring it all back around and make it like, boy, this trilogy of Bond movies? And you find out at the very end when the credits are going up that he's gonna be back in Thunderball. That's right, before Back to the Future did it, they were advertising the next movies in the credits for this movie. That's how confident they were in this series. But by this time, 3 films now, he had really gotten to know the character of Bond, really knew who he was going to be. And like I said, this is most people's favorite Sean Connery James Bond film. But the song Goldfinger's awesome. The villain Goldfinger himself is awesome. You got 3 Bond girls, 2 which are twins, and another one which her name is Pussy Galore.
My name is Pussy Galore.
Man, I can't believe they got away with that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the name, but come on. Like I said earlier, everything had to get bigger and bigger and better from the last film. And that's how sequels always are. They try to overdo it. But in the case of Bond, they really did make him better. Like From Russia With Love is better than Dr. No. Goldfinger is better than both of those. Now, I'm not going to say they get better in quality of films after this. They don't get bad, really. Diamonds Are Forever is the one that's kind of like, it's a little cheeseball because Bond had actually separated, gone off from doing the Bond movies after doing 5 films, and they were going to do this movie on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and he just opted out of it. He said he didn't want to do it, so they got another Bond, George Lazenby. We'll talk about him when his time comes. But he came back for Diamonds Are Forever because he said basically the money was just too good. But what was kind of goofy and silly about that one is that he hadn't done Bond in 4 years. So he was kind of out of shape. He let himself go a little bit. He was older looking. It sort of felt a little bit more like Get Smart than James Bond. Even though they weren't going for that type of humor, it just came off a little silly because he admittedly was out of shape. He looked like a heavy, older James Bond. Which he went on to do Never Say Never Again, way later in the 80s with Kim Basinger, and that one is not even done by the same studio. That's like an offshoot, almost independent Bond film. It doesn't even have the theme song in it, doesn't have the same actors as M or Q or any of that. Like it literally, the only thing that it has in it that's James Bond is some of the names, James Bond himself as Sean, and Sean Connery. Other than that, everything that's familiar with Bond that you like as far as the sound, the feel, the look, all that, not there. It's just the name James Bond and Sean Connery. Anyways, as always, I'm getting off track. Back to Goldfinger. This one definitely is the best looking one so far up until this point. It's the biggest. I'm telling you, if you really go back and really try to pay attention to it, it all looks really good. It was very ambitious for the time. The director, Guy Hamilton, was doing some awesome stuff with the camera that not many guys were doing at that time. And there's tons of explosions, there's car chases, there's shootout scenes, there's great fight choreography. Old boy gets ejected from the Aston Martin. And let's talk about that. We get the classic Aston Martin in this, and we also get Q reprising his role again for the second time. He was in From Russia With Love, but I'm sure you guys are all familiar with Q. He's the character that's always got the gadgets, and there's always a moment in every Bond film, From Russia With Love on, they do it in every movie where Q has his moment to talk to Bond and update him on all the new gadgets he's going to use later on in the movie, or a new car, in this case the Aston Martin, which has all the gadgets. And that Aston Martin has become synonymous with the character of James Bond, especially Sean Connery's character, but for the character of Bond. The Aston Martin shows up later on in multiple Bond films. But yeah, that's him right there leaning up against it. Look at that bad boy. But on top of all that fun stuff, this one actually started to create a really good plot line. From Russia With Love got a little bit more technical than Dr. No, but Dr. No is definitely much more of the kind of the day in the life of James Bond, and kind of the same thing with Russia With Love as well. But this one had a really intriguing plot line for the first time, something that really was well-rounded from beginning to end. Everything was tying in together and connecting together. It just showed they were trying to make them better films. And like I said, this is my favorite Connery Bond, and I think it's a lot of people's favorite Connery Bond. And little thing like Austin Powers, All those movies parodied this movie a lot for a lot of the villains they use. Like they parody the one girl off of Pussy Galore.
This is my Italian confidential secretary. Her name is Alata. Alata for China.
The odd job character that throws his hat. And then in part 3 of Austin Powers, Goldmember. I mean, it's clear as day he's making fun of Goldfinger. I love gold! I love gold! It's probably the most referenced. I mean, the line where Bond is tied up and he's talking to Goldfinger and he's saying, "Do you expect me to talk?"
No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
Come on, that's referenced in so many different things like Family Guy, all kinds of different stuff. And it's probably the most advertised Bond line in any sort of like TBS marathon they're doing or any old school advertisements when they came out on DVD or Blu-ray. They always show that part.
You expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die.
But the plot really is good with it focusing on this Fort Knox robbery thing. That's a bigger thing at stake on top of that. But there's twists and turns, there's romance, there's action, there's some tension, some double crossing. It's an intelligent movie that actually relies on the audience to be intelligent. And by this film, it had permanently solidified James Bond into the pop culture of the world. After this one, they were like, yep, we're on the roll. We're going to just keep making them. Because there was no character like this at this point. We didn't have anything that was this ongoing thing that was pretty much agreed on from everybody. Didn't matter what movies you liked at the time. You were pretty much, well, yeah, the Bond movies are good. Because they weren't just cheesy action movies. They were intelligent or trying to be intelligent. And they were trying to be better every time for a little while. And the fact that now that they're about to release the 25th film, I got old Daniel Craig back there in No Time to Die. That poster actually says April 2020 is the release date on it. So that hopefully it's gonna be like a collector's item or something.
$5, Buster.
But yeah, 25 films. And that's not including Never Say Never Again or the parody that they made of it called Casino Royale back in the day. Yeah, that's right. Before they made the Casino Royale with Daniel Craig, they made the parody. But you can say, yeah, we've got the Marvel movies now. They've done so many, but that's a huge sandbox and playground and just a whole box full of characters that you can deal with. These movies follow Bond every film. That's your guy. That's what you follow every movie. Yeah, they toss in villains and different things, but not really. For the most part, even that's kind of regurgitated, but I like that. I want it to be the same feel because Bond just holds a special place of like intelligence, spy, tough, badass, action, definitely some bro films. So I say if you haven't seen any Bond films and you're only going to check out one by every actor, check this one out by Connery. I say watch them all, but if you can only watch one from each actor, check this one out. I think it's his best one. All the other ones are good too. I love them. I have them all. But like I said, I think this is the one that just really holds up 100% still today. Everything about it is really good, ambitious. And so for the ranking of Sean Connery and my 1 through 6, number 2. Don't be mad at me. Yeah, I'm sure you're curious who's gonna be number 1. That's just the way I feel. Yeah, he was the first one that ever played the character, but for some reason, there's someone else that I just prefer. You gotta tune into the next videos coming up to see who that's gonna be. Guys, I really appreciate y'all tuning in so much. I can't wait to keep these rolling. And Christmas is right around the corner, so we got Christmas movies coming up after all these. Put down in the comments what you think about the Bond movies, what you think about Connery, what's your favorite Connery Bond movie. Look for BrassReel Brothers on Facebook. Look for Bobby Williams on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter, BrassReel Bobby at BrassReel. And please remember to hit that subscribe button. Help us get to the top of the world. And as always, if life gives you lemons, make some hot, fresh popcorn.